Procrastination is not a flaw. It is a signal, a whisper from your brain, telling you to stay comfortable and avoid the unknown. Many of us spend hours scrolling through screens, planning to start later, or telling ourselves tomorrow will be better yet tomorrow. Rarely comes because the brain is wired to seek ease and avoid effort. But what if you could trick that same brain to serve you instead of holding you back? What if the resistance you feel every time you try to act could be transformed into momentum and excitement? What if instead of avoiding tasks, you found yourself drawn to action as naturally as breathing? This book is not about willpower alone. Willpower is fleeting. It is a muscle that tires quickly when faced with distraction, fatigue, or fear. This book is about understanding how your mind works and designing the triggers, environments, and micro-strategies that make action automatic. The goal is to turn procrastination into progress by rewiring the way you think, feel, and respond to challenges. You will learn how to break tasks into irresistible micro-actions that feel almost effortless. You will discover how to create your environment so it nudges you toward productivity. You will explore stories of people who conquered fear and perfectionism and turned their daily habits into unstoppable engines of achievement. You will understand why emotions can be your ally and how to enter flow states that make work feel effortless and joyful. By the end of this journey, procrastination will no longer feel like a mountain to climb. It will become a simple choice you can navigate with clarity, courage, and confidence. Every page in this book is designed to trick your brain into action by creating experiences, feelings, and mental cues that make starting easier and continuing natural. Techniques in this book are grounded in science, but told through stories and examples, so you can see them come alive in your own life. This is more than a guide. It is an invitation to step into a new identity, the identity of a person who acts without hesitation, who transforms thought into action, who wakes up every day with a sense of purpose and direction. Procrastination is not something you fight. It is something you outsmart, and this book will show you exactly how to do it. From the first chapter, you will begin to understand the hidden mechanisms in your brain that delay action. You will see how ordinary people with ordinary fears and distractions became extraordinary by mastering the art of momentum. You will begin to notice small shifts in your thoughts and choices as your mind starts to respond differently to challenges. The journey ahead is not about forcing yourself to work harder or stay up longer. It is about learning the science of action, the psychology of motivation, and the art of designing your mind so that action becomes inevitable. You are about to discover methods that create unstoppable momentum, that transform procrastination into productivity, and that turn intention into tangible results. Your brain is powerful and adaptable. It is capable of remarkable feats when guided correctly. This book is a map to navigate the terrain of your mind and to trick it into serving your goals instead of resisting them. The path to a life free from procrastination starts here, and every page is a step toward a version of yourself that acts decisively, confidently, and joyfully. Chapter 1. The hidden battle inside your mind. Every human being experiences the quiet struggle between intention and action. A person wakes up with plans, dreams, and goals, yet hours later, those same plans. The book remained closed. The exercise routine never began. The important work was delayed once again. This experience is called procrastination, yet the word alone does not explain the deep, invisible forces behind it. Many people believe procrastination is laziness, but laziness is rarely the true cause. In reality, procrastination is a protection system built deep inside the human brain. The brain evolved to keep humans safe and conserve energy. Long ago, survival depended on avoiding unnecessary effort and danger. When the brain senses difficulty, uncertainty, or potential failure, it activates resistance. This resistance feels like boredom, fatigue, distraction, or even sudden interest in other activities. A student may sit down to study and suddenly feel the strong desire to check a phone. A writer may open a blank page and suddenly remember. Dozens of small tasks that feel more urgent. A worker may delay an important project while organizing a desk or browsing the internet. These actions seem small, yet they are signals from the brain attempting to protect itself from discomfort. The first step toward defeating procrastination is understanding that the brain prefers immediate reward over long-term success. The brain releases chemicals of pleasure when a person receives quick satisfaction. This can happen when someone watches a short video, checks a message, eats a snack, or scrolls through social media. These activities provide instant reward, while important goals often require effort, patience, and delayed satisfaction. Because of this difference, the brain quietly pushes a person toward the easier choice. Consider the story of a young university student named Amir. Amir had big dreams. He wanted to graduate with excellent grades and build a successful future. Every evening he promised himself he would study for several hours. Yet every evening, the same pattern appeared. Amir opened his laptop, planning to begin his work. But within minutes, he was watching short videos, reading random posts, and chatting with friends. Hours passed quickly, and by the time he realized it, the night was over. Amir felt frustrated with himself. He believed something was wrong with his discipline. He promised to work harder the next day, but the same cycle continued. One day, Amir attended a seminar about how the brain responds to tasks. The speaker explained that the brain often fears large tasks because they appear overwhelming. When the brain senses something big and uncertain, it triggers avoidance. Amir suddenly realized something important. The problem was not laziness. The problem was the way his brain perceived the task. Studying for several hours felt like. So Amir tried a different strategy. Instead of telling himself to study all evening, he told himself he would only study for 5 minutes. 5 minutes felt small, harmless, and easy. The brain did not resist such a tiny commitment. Amir opened his book and began reading. Something interesting happened. After 5 minutes, Amir continued studying without forcing himself. The task no longer felt frightening because he had already started. The next day, Amir repeated the same experiment. He told his brain he would only study for 5 minutes again. Soon, those 5 minutes turned into 20 minutes, then an hour, then an entire productive evening. Amir discovered a powerful truth. The hardest part of any task is beginning. The brain often exaggerates the difficulty of starting, but once action begins, the mind naturally adjusts and the task becomes easier. This small change transformed Amir's life. His grades improved, his confidence grew, and he finally felt control over his time. Stories like Amir's appear everywhere in the world. Entrepreneurs, artists, scientists, and athletes all experience moments when their brains resist action. Yet the most successful people learn how to work with their minds instead of fighting them. Consider another example. A young artist named Sarah dreamed of becoming a professional illustrator. She loved drawing, but whenever she thought about building a portfolio, she felt overwhelmed. Creating dozens of drawings felt impossible. Sarah spent many days imagining her future success, yet she rarely began the work. One afternoon, Sarah decided to experiment with a simple rule. She promised herself she would draw one small sketch every day, no matter how simple. The first sketch took only 10 minutes. The next day, she drew another small image. Soon the habit felt natural. Her brain no longer viewed drawing as a huge project, but as a daily activity. Months later, Sarah looked back at her notebook and discovered something remarkable. Those small sketches had turned into hundreds of drawings. Her portfolio was complete, and her skills had improved dramatically. What once felt impossible became effortless because she removed the mental barrier of starting. The brain responds strongly to perceived difficulty. When a task feels large, the brain produces resistance. When a task feels small, the brain relaxes and allows action. This simple psychological shift is the foundation for overcoming procrastination. Another important factor is fear. Many people delay action because the brain fears failure, criticism, or imperfection. Imagine a young entrepreneur named Daniel who wanted to launch his own business. Daniel spent months planning, reading, and learning, yet he never took the final step of starting. Deep inside his mind, a quiet voice whispered questions. What if the idea fails? What if people criticize the work? What if success never comes? These questions created anxiety, and the brain responded by delaying action. Daniel believed he needed perfect preparation before beginning. He kept adjusting plans, searching for better strategies, and waiting for the perfect moment. One evening, Daniel spoke with a mentor who shared a powerful lesson. The mentor said success does not come. The mentor explained that many successful companies began with simple, rough ideas. The founders learned through action, mistakes, and adaptation. Daniel finally understood that waiting for perfection was another form of procrastination. The next morning, Daniel launched a small version of his idea. It was not perfect, yet it was real. Customers began responding, feedback arrived, and Daniel learned valuable lessons. Over time, his business improved and grew. Daniel discovered that action creates clarity, while delay creates confusion. The brain often fears uncertainty, yet the only way to remove uncertainty is through action. Procrastination also appears when tasks lack emotional meaning. The brain loves activities that feel meaningful, exciting, or rewarding. When a task feels empty, the mind naturally searches for more interesting alternatives. For example, imagine a young office worker named Aisha, who disliked her daily paperwork. Every afternoon she promised herself she would finish the reports quickly, but the task felt dull and repetitive. Aisha often delayed the work until the final hour of the day, which created stress and frustration. One day, Aisha decided to change how she viewed the task. Instead of seeing paperwork as boring, she connected it to a larger purpose. She reminded herself that accurate reports help the entire company make better decisions. She also created a small reward system. After completing each report, she allowed herself a short walk and a cup of her favorite tea. These small emotional rewards transformed her attitude. The task no longer felt meaningless because it was connected to progress and personal enjoyment. The brain began associating the work with positive feelings, and procrastination slowly disappeared. Understanding these examples reveals an important truth. Procrastination is not a permanent trait. It is a response created by the brain when tasks appear large, uncertain, or unrewarding. Once a person understands these triggers, the mind can be guided toward action. Another powerful insight involves energy and focus. The brain requires energy to perform challenging work. When a person is tired, stressed, or distracted, the brain automatically chooses easier activities. Imagine a young athlete named Rahim who trained for a marathon. Rahim noticed that his motivation changed throughout the day. When he trained early in the morning, his energy felt strong and focused. When he delayed training until late evening, he often felt too tired to begin. Rahim realized that his brain had natural rhythms. He adjusted his routine and began training during the hours when his energy was highest. This simple change improved his consistency and performance. The lesson is clear. Productivity is not only about discipline, it is also about understanding how the brain manages energy. When people align important tasks with their natural energy cycles, action becomes easier and procrastination loses its power. Another hidden cause of procrastination is decision overload. Modern life presents endless choices, messages, and distractions. Every notification, every email, and every piece of information competes for attention. The brain becomes overwhelmed, and when the mind feels overloaded, it often escapes into simple distractions. Imagine a young professional named Nadia, who worked from home. Her phone buzzed constantly with messages, news updates, and social media notifications. Each time she attempted to focus, her attention was interrupted. The brain lost its concentration, and tasks felt more difficult than they truly were. One day, Nadia decided to create a quiet work environment. She turned off notifications, placed her phone in another room, and focused on a single task at a time. Within days, she noticed a dramatic difference. Her work became faster, smoother, and more satisfying. By removing unnecessary decisions, she allowed her brain to concentrate on meaningful action. This experience reveals another secret. The brain performs best when distractions are minimized and attention is protected. Understanding the psychology of procrastination is like turning on a light inside a dark room. Suddenly, the hidden obstacles become visible. The brain is not an enemy. It is a powerful system that simply seeks comfort, safety, and efficiency. When tasks appear frightening, overwhelming, or meaningless, the brain activates avoidance. When tasks appear small, meaningful, and manageable, the brain allows progress. Every person who learns this principle gains a powerful advantage. Instead of fighting their mind, they begin guiding it. The journey to defeating procrastination does not require extreme discipline. It requires awareness, strategy, and small changes in how tasks are presented to the brain. When people understand their mental patterns, they discover that action is not as difficult as it once seemed. The stories of Amir, Sarah, Daniel, Aisha, Rahim, and Nadia demonstrate one important truth. Ordinary people can overcome procrastination by learning how their minds respond to challenges. Each person faced the same invisible barrier, yet each person discovered a different method to move forward. Their success did not come from force, but from understanding. In the chapters ahead, you will learn many more ways to guide your brain toward action. You will discover how to transform hesitation into momentum and how to create habits that make productivity feel natural. The battle with procrastination begins in the mind, but victory begins with awareness. Once you understand how the brain truly works, you will realize something powerful. Your mind can be trained, guided, and even gently tricked into taking action. And when action begins, progress becomes unstoppable. Chapter 2. Rewiring your brain for action. Every person who has ever struggled with procrastination eventually asks the same question inside the mind. Why is it so difficult to begin something important, even when we truly want success? The answer lies in the patterns that exist inside the brain. The brain is not simply a thinking machine. It is a pattern-forming system. Every repeated action, thought, and emotion builds a pathway inside the mind. Over time, these pathways become automatic. If a person repeatedly delays work, the brain learns the habit of delay. If a person repeatedly takes action, the brain learns the habit of movement. This means procrastination is not just a momentary choice. It is often a learned mental pattern. The good news is that patterns can be changed. The brain is flexible and capable of forming new habits. This ability is known as mental adaptation or brain plasticity. It means your mind can be trained to behave differently. To understand how this works, imagine a small path through a forest. If one person walks through the forest, once the path is barely visible. If many people walk through the same route every day, the ground becomes clear and smooth. Soon the path becomes the easiest way to travel. The same principle exists inside the brain. Every repeated action strengthens a mental path. If someone repeatedly chooses distraction, that path becomes stronger. If someone repeatedly chooses action, the path of productivity becomes stronger. Rewiring the brain means deliberately creating new mental paths that lead to action. The first step in this transformation is reducing the mental resistance that appears before a task begins. Most people attempt to force themselves into action using pressure or guilt. They say things like, "I must work harder," "I must stop being lazy," "I must push myself." Unfortunately, the brain often resists pressure. When the mind feels forced, it seeks escape and comfort. Instead of force, successful people use a different method. They make action feel easier than avoidance. Consider the story of a young software developer named Hassan. Hassan worked for a technology company and often faced complex coding projects. The tasks required deep concentration and creativity. Yet every morning Hassan found himself delaying the work. He checked messages, drank coffee, browsed websites, and waited for motivation to appear. Hours passed before he finally began the project. Hassan felt frustrated because he knew he had the skills, yet he struggled to begin. One day Hassan read about a simple technique used by many productive professionals. The idea was to create a starting ritual. A starting ritual is a small repeated action that signals the brain that it is time to begin work. Hassan decided to experiment with this idea. Every morning he performed the same simple routine. He sat at his desk, opened his notebook, wrote the first tiny step of the project, and started a timer for 10 minutes. That was all. At first, the process felt almost too simple, but something surprising happened. The moment Hassan completed his ritual, his brain automatically shifted into focus. The ritual removed the confusion of deciding when and how to begin. Over time, his brain began associating the ritual with productive work. After several weeks, Hassan noticed that he no longer needed strong motivation. The ritual itself triggered action. This example reveals an important truth. The brain loves predictable patterns. When a behavior is repeated in the same way, it becomes automatic. Creating small rituals can reprogram the mind to begin tasks without hesitation. Another powerful method for rewiring the brain is changing how tasks are framed in the mind. Many people describe tasks in ways that create resistance. For example, someone might think, I must finish this huge project today. The brain immediately senses pressure and difficulty. Instead, the task can be reframed in a way that feels manageable. A person might say, I will begin with the first simple step. This small shift removes fear and encourages movement. Consider the experience of a young teacher named Fatima. Fatima dreamed of writing a book about education. She had many ideas and stories, yet every time she thought about writing an entire book, she felt overwhelmed. The project felt enormous and distant. For months, the dream remained only an idea. One afternoon, Fatima spoke with a friend who had already written a novel. The friend shared an interesting secret. Books are not written all at once. They are written one page at a time. Fatima decided to change her approach. She made a promise to herself that she would write one page each day. One page felt simple and achievable. The next morning she wrote her first page. The process took less than The following day she wrote another page. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. Slowly her manuscript grew larger. Eventually, Fatima held something remarkable in her hands, a complete book. The dream that once felt impossible became reality because she trained her brain to focus on small daily action. Rewiring the brain often begins with small commitments that grow stronger over time. Another important factor is emotional reward. The brain naturally repeats behaviors that produce positive feelings. If a task feels painful or boring, the brain avoids it. If a task produces satisfaction, the brain begins to seek it. Successful people learn to attach positive emotion to productive behavior. Imagine a young fitness trainer named Omar. Yet he once struggled with his own exercise routine. He understood the benefits of training, yet sometimes he delayed workouts. One day, Omar realized that he always felt proud and energized after finishing exercise. He decided to focus his attention on that feeling instead of the effort required to begin. Before each workout, Omar imagined the sense of strength, confidence, and accomplishment that followed training. This mental image created anticipation. His brain began associating exercise with reward. Soon he found himself eager to begin workouts because the emotional benefit felt powerful. This simple mental shift rewired his motivation. The brain started craving the positive feeling connected to action. Visualization is another powerful technique that shapes the brain. When people imagine themselves completing a task, the brain activates many of the same neural pathways used during real action. This prepares the mind for movement. Consider the story of a university athlete named Lina. Lina competed in competitive swimming and often faced intense training sessions. Early morning practices required discipline and focus. Some mornings she felt the urge to stay in bed and skip training. Her coach introduced a powerful mental exercise. Each night before sleeping, Lina closed her eyes and imagined herself waking up early, walking to the pool, diving into the water, and completing a strong practice. She visualized every movement with clarity. Over time, this mental rehearsal made the real action feel familiar. Her brain recognized the pattern and reduced resistance. Lina began waking up with greater readiness because her mind had already practiced the behavior. Visualization trained her brain to expect action. Another key principle in rewiring the brain is identity. People often behave according to how they see themselves. If someone thinks I am a procrastinator, the brain tends to follow that belief. If someone thinks I am a person who takes action, the brain begins to support that identity. Identity acts like a compass guiding behavior. Consider the experience of a young journalist named Tariq. Tariq often delayed writing articles until deadlines approached. He believed he worked best under pressure. Yet the stress of rushing created frustration. One day, Tariq decided to change how he described himself. Instead of saying I procrastinate, he began telling himself, I am a disciplined writer. At first, the statement felt strange, but he repeated it every morning before beginning work. He also acted according to that identity by starting his writing earlier each day. Slowly, his behavior began matching the new belief. His brain started accepting the identity of a disciplined professional. Over time, the old habit of delay faded. This transformation occurred because identity shapes decision-making. When the brain believes something about itself, it seeks actions that confirm the belief. Changing identity can reshape behavior. Rewiring the brain also requires patience. Many people attempt dramatic changes overnight and feel discouraged when results appear slowly. In reality, the brain changes gradually. Each repeated action strengthens new pathways. Small daily improvements accumulate into powerful transformation. Imagine a gardener planting seeds in soil. At first, nothing seems to happen. The surface remains quiet and empty. But beneath the soil, roots are forming. With time, sunlight, and water, the seeds grow into strong plants. The same process happens in the mind. Each small action plants a seed of change. Consistency allows these seeds to grow. People who overcome procrastination rarely rely on sudden bursts of motivation. Instead, they build systems that guide their behavior. A system is a simple structure that removes confusion. For example, a writer might create a system of writing every morning before checking messages. A student might create a system of studying at the same time every afternoon. A business owner might begin each day by completing the most important task first. Systems reduce decision-making and help the brain follow predictable routines. The more predictable the behavior becomes, the easier action feels. Over time, these routines become habits that require little effort. Rewiring the brain is not about forcing yourself into constant effort. It is about designing patterns that make. When rituals, identity, emotional rewards, and small steps work together, the brain gradually shifts from avoidance to momentum. People who once struggled with procrastination often discover a surprising truth. Action can become enjoyable. Completing tasks produces confidence, progress, and pride. These feelings create a cycle of motivation. The more action a person takes, the more capable they feel. The more capable they feel, the easier it becomes to act again. This cycle builds powerful momentum. Chapter 3. The Power of Micro-Action. Many people believe that great achievements require great bursts of effort. They imagine success as a dramatic moment where motivation suddenly appears and pushes them forward with unstoppable energy. But real life rarely works this way. Most meaningful achievements are not built through sudden heroic effort. They are built through small, repeated actions that grow quietly over time. This simple truth is one of the most powerful ways to defeat procrastination. The brain often fears large tasks. When something appears big, complicated, or time-consuming, the mind reacts with hesitation. The task feels like a mountain, and the brain searches for ways to avoid climbing it. Yet when the same task is broken into extremely small pieces, something remarkable happens. The brain stops resisting and begins cooperating. This is the power of micro-action. A micro-action is the smallest possible step that moves a person toward a goal. It is so small that it feels almost impossible to refuse. Instead of saying, "I will work for 3 hours," a person might say, "I will open the document and write 1 sentence." Instead of saying, "I will study the entire chapter," a student might say, "I will read 1 paragraph." Instead of saying, "I will exercise for an hour," someone might say, "I will perform 1 simple stretch." These steps seem almost insignificant, yet they have an extraordinary psychological effect. Micro-actions remove the fear of starting. Once action begins, the brain often continues naturally because the barrier of resistance has already been broken. To understand this idea more clearly, consider the story of a young writer named Zane. Zane dreamed of becoming a novelist since childhood. He loved stories, imagination, and creativity. Yet whenever he tried to write a novel, he quickly felt overwhelmed. The idea of writing hundreds of pages seemed impossible. Zane often sat in front of a blank page, feeling pressure and doubt. Days turned into weeks, and the novel remained unfinished. One evening, Zane attended a small writing workshop where an experienced author shared a surprising strategy. The author explained that many successful books were written using very small daily writing goals. The author suggested writing just 50 words each day. Zane was shocked. 50 words felt almost too small to matter. But the author explained something important. 50 words a day becomes more than 18,000 words in a year. Zane decided to try the experiment. The next morning he opened his notebook and wrote 50 words. The task took only a few minutes. Yet after writing those 50 words, he noticed something interesting. His mind continued generating ideas. He wrote another sentence, then another paragraph. Some days he stopped at 50 words, but many days he continued far beyond that amount. After several months, Zane realized he had written an entire manuscript. The novel that once felt impossible had grown through tiny daily actions. The secret was not dramatic inspiration. The secret was beginning with something small. Micro-actions work because the brain prefers progress that feels safe and manageable. Large tasks trigger anxiety, but tiny tasks feel harmless. Once the mind experiences small success, confidence grows, and the brain becomes more willing to continue. This principle appears in many areas of life. Consider the journey of a young entrepreneur named Adil. Adil wanted to start an online business selling handmade products. He had creative ideas and strong motivation, but the process of building a business felt complicated. There were websites to design, products to create, and marketing strategies to learn. Whenever Adil thought about all these responsibilities, at once he felt overwhelmed and delayed taking action. One day, Adil changed his approach. Instead of focusing on the entire business, he focused on one micro-action each day. One day, he wrote the name of his brand. Another day, he designed a simple logo. Another day, he created one product. Each step was small and manageable. Slowly, these tiny actions formed a complete business. Within a year, Adil had a growing online store and loyal customers. Looking back, he realized that the success was not created by huge efforts, but by consistent micro-progress. The brain responds strongly to visible progress. Even small achievements release positive feelings that encourage continued action. Micro-actions create a series of victories. Each small step proves to the brain that progress is possible. This steady momentum weakens the habit of procrastination. Another powerful example can be seen in the world of fitness. Many people promise themselves that they will start exercising regularly. They imagine long, intense workouts and strict routines. Yet these expectations often create pressure. The brain sees the effort as difficult and chooses comfort instead. A young office worker named Bilal experienced this challenge. Bilal spent long hours sitting at a desk and wanted to improve his health. He promised himself he would go to the gym every day for a full workout. For a few days, he followed the plan, but soon fatigue and busy schedules interrupted his routine. Eventually, he stopped going altogether. One day, Bilal read about the power of micro-habits. Instead of promising a full workout, he made a much smaller commitment. He promised to perform one push movement each morning. Just one. The action felt so simple that his brain had no reason to resist. The next morning, Bilal performed one push movement and then added another without thinking. Within minutes, he was exercising naturally. As weeks passed, the routine expanded into longer. The habit had formed because the beginning felt effortless. Bilal discovered that consistency grows when the starting point is small. Microactions also help the brain overcome perfectionism. Many people delay tasks because they want perfect results. They believe they must begin when conditions are ideal or when they feel fully prepared. This belief creates endless waiting. Yet microactions focus on progress rather than perfection. Consider the experience of a young painter named Hina. Hina loved painting landscapes, but she often delayed starting new artwork because she wanted every painting to be flawless. She spent hours imagining the perfect composition, yet rarely touched the canvas. A mentor gave Hina an unusual challenge. The mentor asked her to paint one tiny sketch each day without worrying about quality. These sketches were not meant to be masterpieces. They were simply exercises. At first, Hina felt uncomfortable because the sketches looked imperfect. But over time, something surprising happened. The daily practice improved her confidence and creativity. The fear of imperfection faded. Soon Hina began creating larger paintings with freedom and joy. The microactions had removed the pressure that once blocked her creativity. The brain learned that starting did not require perfection. This principle applies to learning new skills as well. Imagine a young student named Samina who wanted to learn a new language. The idea of mastering grammar, vocabulary, and pronunciation seemed overwhelming. Samina often delayed studying because the process felt too. Then she decided to use micro-learning. Every day she learned just 3 new words. 3 words felt simple and enjoyable. Weeks later, her vocabulary had grown significantly. Encouraged by this progress, she added short conversations and listening practice. Within a year, Samina was able to communicate confidently in the new language. Her success came from consistent micro-learning rather than intense study sessions. Microactions also reduce mental fatigue. Large tasks require strong concentration and energy. When the brain feels tired, it resists heavy effort. Small tasks, however, require very little energy. This allows a person to continue making progress, even on days when motivation feels low. A microaction still keeps the habit alive. Imagine a musician practicing an instrument. On busy days, the musician may only play for a few minutes. But those few minutes maintain the rhythm of practice. The habit remains strong because action never completely stops. This continuity is extremely powerful. Microactions transform large goals into approachable journeys. Instead of seeing a distant mountain, a person sees the next small step. Each step feels achievable, and each step brings the person closer to success. Over time, these tiny movements accumulate into extraordinary progress. Great books, great companies, great inventions, and great achievements often begin with the smallest possible action. One sentence, one idea, one experiment, one step. People who master the power of micro-action gain a unique advantage. They no longer wait for perfect motivation or perfect conditions. They simply begin with the smallest possible step. And once the first step is taken, the next step becomes easier. Momentum builds naturally. Chapter 4. The Power of Inner Motivation. Every human being desires progress, growth, and achievement. Yet many people struggle to maintain consistent action, even when they know what they want. The reason is often connected to motivation. Motivation is the energy that moves a person from thought to action. It is the force that turns intention into movement. Yet not all motivation is the same. Some motivation comes from outside pressure, while other motivation comes from deep inside the mind. When motivation comes only from external pressure, it often disappears quickly. A student may study because of exams. A worker may complete tasks because of a supervisor. An athlete may train because of competition. These reasons can push a person forward for a short time, but they rarely create lasting energy. True consistent action comes from inner motivation. Inner motivation is the feeling of purpose, curiosity, and personal meaning that lives inside a person. When someone acts from inner motivation, the effort feels natural. The brain responds very differently to tasks that feel meaningful. When a task connects to personal values, dreams, or identity, the mind becomes more willing to invest energy. This connection transforms work from a burden into a journey. To understand this idea, more clearly imagine the story of a young medical student named Ibrahim. Ibrahim faced long hours of study, complex textbooks, and difficult exams. Many of his classmates often complained about the pressure and exhaustion. Some students studied only because they feared failing their exams. But Ibrahim had it different. Since childhood, he had dreamed of helping people who were suffering from illness. He remembered watching doctors care for his grandfather during a difficult time. That experience created a powerful desire in his heart. Whenever Ibrahim opened his books, he did not see only pages of information. He saw knowledge that would one day allow him to heal others. This vision filled him with purpose. Even when the work felt challenging, Ibrahim felt motivated because the effort was connected to something meaningful. His inner motivation helped him continue when others felt discouraged. Years later, Ibrahim became a respected doctor who served many patients with compassion and dedication. His success was not created only by intelligence. It was powered by purpose. Purpose acts like a compass for the brain. When the mind understands why something matters, it becomes easier to act. Without purpose, tasks feel empty, and the brain searches for easier distractions. Many people struggle with procrastination because they focus only on the difficulty of a task rather than the meaning behind it. Consider the experience of a young engineer named Sarah. Sarah worked at a company designing environmental technology. Her job involved complex research and long hours of technical work. At times, the tasks felt exhausting and repetitive. For a while, Sarah noticed that she was delaying projects and losing motivation. One day, she attended a conference where scientists discussed the impact of environmental pollution on communities around. Sarah listened to stories about rivers that had been cleaned, forests that had been protected, and cities that had improved air quality through innovative technology. Suddenly, Sarah remembered why she had chosen her career. Her work was not just about technical drawings and calculations. It was about protecting nature and improving lives. The next time she returned to her projects, she approached them with a different mindset. The tasks were the same, but her perspective had changed. Now each project felt like a contribution to something important. Her inner motivation returned, and procrastination began to fade. This story shows how reconnecting with purpose can awaken energy inside the brain. When people understand the deeper meaning of their work, they naturally feel more committed. Curiosity is another powerful source of inner motivation. The human brain loves discovery, exploration, and learning. Children demonstrate this natural curiosity every day. They ask questions, explore new environments, and experiment with ideas. Unfortunately, many adults lose touch with this curiosity because tasks begin to feel routine and mechanical. Yet curiosity can transform the way the brain experiences effort. Imagine a young programmer named Kamran who wanted to learn a new programming language. At first, the material seemed confusing and difficult. Kamran often felt tempted to give up. Then he changed his approach. Instead of thinking about learning as a requirement, he treated it like an exploration. He asked himself interesting questions. What kind of applications could this language create? What problems could it solve? How do experienced programmers use these tools to build innovative technology? By approaching the subject with curiosity, Kamran turned learning into an adventure. Each new concept became a puzzle to solve rather than a burden to endure. His brain responded with excitement instead of resistance. Soon Kamran was spending hours experimenting with new ideas because the process felt engaging. Curiosity had transformed the experience of learning. Another powerful form of inner motivation comes from personal growth. Many people feel deeply satisfied when they notice improvement in their skills, abilities, and knowledge. Progress creates a sense of accomplishment that encourages continued effort. Imagine a young musician named Nadia. Nadia loved playing the piano, but practicing sometimes felt repetitive. She often delayed practice sessions because the exercises seemed boring. One day, her music teacher suggested recording her practice sessions every week. At the end of each week, Nadia listened to the recording from the previous week. For the first time, she clearly heard how much her playing had improved. Her fingers moved more smoothly, the melodies sounded richer, and her confidence had grown. This experience created a powerful feeling of pride. Nadia realized that each practice session was shaping her ability. Now she looked forward to practicing because she wanted to witness her own progress. The brain loves evidence of growth. When people can see or feel improvement, they become more motivated to continue. This is why tracking progress, journaling achievements, or celebrating small victories can strengthen inner motivation. Another important element of motivation is personal identity. People often behave according to the story they tell themselves about who they are. If someone believes I am someone who avoids challenges, the brain tends to follow that belief. If someone believes I am someone who learns, grows, and takes action, the brain begins to align with that identity. Consider the story of a young athlete named Yusuf. Yusuf wanted to become a professional runner, but he often skipped training sessions because the workouts felt demanding. One day, his coach had a conversation with him. The coach asked Yusuf a simple question. Do you see yourself as someone who dreams about success or someone who trains like a champion? The question stayed in Yusuf's mind. That evening, he began thinking differently. He started viewing himself not as someone who hoped to succeed, but as someone who was becoming an athlete. This shift in identity changed his behavior. Athletes train even when they feel tired. Athletes follow routines. Athletes respect their goals. By adopting this identity, Yusuf found the motivation to practice consistently. His actions began matching his new self-image. The brain naturally seeks harmony between identity and behavior. When people believe they are disciplined learners, creators, or professionals, they are more likely to act accordingly. Another source of inner motivation comes from contribution. Humans often feel deeply fulfilled when their actions benefit others. Helping people, solving problems, and improving lives creates emotional satisfaction that strengthens motivation. Imagine a teacher who works long hours preparing lessons. If the teacher focuses only on grading papers and completing tasks, the work may feel exhausting. But when the teacher remembers the impact on students, the meaning becomes clear. Each lesson shapes minds, inspires curiosity, and opens opportunities for the future. This sense of contribution creates powerful motivation. The brain feels proud when effort leads to positive influence. This emotional reward encourages continued dedication. Inner motivation does not eliminate challenges or fatigue, but it provides strength during difficult moments. When tasks feel connected to purpose, curiosity, growth, identity, or contribution, the brain interprets the effort as worthwhile. This interpretation changes the emotional experience of work. Instead of feeling forced, a person feels driven. Instead of feeling trapped, a person feels committed. When inner motivation combines with the strategies from earlier chapters, something powerful begins to happen. Micro-actions make starting easy. Mental rituals create consistent patterns. Purpose and curiosity fuel the energy to continue. Together, these forces form a strong foundation for lasting productivity. People who discover their inner motivation often realize that success is not about constant pressure or discipline. It is about aligning action with meaning. When the mind understands why something matters, the path forward becomes clearer. The brain begins supporting progress rather than resisting it. Chapter 5. Designing an environment that creates action. Many people believe productivity is controlled only by discipline, willpower, and motivation. They imagine that strong determination alone can overcome distraction and procrastination. Yet there is another powerful force that quietly shapes behavior every day. That force is the environment. The environment is everything that surrounds a person. The room, the desk, the sounds, the people, the tools, the digital devices, and even the atmosphere of a place. These elements may seem ordinary, yet they constantly influence the decisions made by the brain. The brain naturally reacts to its surroundings. If the environment encourages distraction, the mind drifts toward distraction. If the environment supports focus, the mind finds it easier to concentrate. Understanding this principle can transform the way people approach work, learning, and personal goals. Instead of fighting the brain with constant effort, a person can design surroundings that guide behavior in the right direction. To see how powerful environment can be, imagine the story of a young university student named Hamza. Hamza wanted to improve his academic performance. He promised himself that he would study every evening for several hours. But each evening he sat in his bedroom, surrounded by a television, a gaming console, and his phone filled with social media notifications. Whenever he tried to study, his attention quickly shifted toward these distractions. Minutes turned into hours, and the textbooks remained closed. Hamza felt frustrated because he believed he lacked discipline. One day, a professor explained something important. The professor said environment often controls behavior more strongly than motivation. The professor suggested that Hamza change his study location. The next day, Hamza visited the university library. The room was quiet, students were focused, and the atmosphere encouraged learning. When Hamza opened his books in that environment, he noticed something surprising. Studying felt easier. There were fewer distractions, and the presence of other focused students created a sense of shared purpose. His brain adapted to the new surroundings. Within weeks, his study habits improved dramatically. The difference was not stronger willpower. The difference was the environment. This story shows how surroundings influence the mind. The brain constantly observes signals from the environment. These signals guide behavior in subtle ways. When the environment is filled with distractions, the brain naturally chooses the easiest available stimulation. Phones, notifications, television, and endless digital content compete for attention because they provide instant pleasure. Important tasks often require deeper focus and patience, which makes them less attractive in a distracting environment. By changing surroundings, a person can remove many of these temptations. Consider another example from the life of a young writer named Amina. Amina dreamed of writing articles and stories, but she struggled to concentrate at home. Her desk was cluttered with unrelated objects, papers, and unfinished. Whenever she tried to write, her mind wandered. One day she decided to redesign her workspace. She cleared the desk, removed unnecessary items, and placed only the tools she needed for writing. A notebook, a pen, and a laptop remained on the desk. She also added a small plant near the window, which created a calm atmosphere. This simple transformation changed how the space felt. When Amina sat at the desk, her brain recognized it as a place for writing. The environment signaled focus and creativity. Over time, the desk itself became a trigger for whenever she sat down, her mind naturally prepared for writing. The environment had become an ally. This principle is used by many highly productive people. They create specific environments for specific activities. A desk may be used only for work. A reading chair may be used only for study. A gym area may be used only for exercise. When the brain repeatedly experiences the same behavior in the same location, it forms strong mental associations. The place itself begins to trigger the habit. For example, imagine a young entrepreneur named Salman who ran an online business from home. At first, he worked from his bed or couch using his laptop. This made it difficult to separate relaxation from work. His brain associated the space with comfort rather than productivity. Eventually, Salman created a small dedicated workspace in one corner of his home. He placed a desk, a chair, and a lamp in that area, and decided that this space would be used only for business tasks. Each morning he sat at that desk to begin his work. After several weeks, something interesting happened. The moment Salman sat in that chair, his brain shifted into work mode. The environment had become a signal that it was time to focus. This method reduced procrastination because the surroundings themselves encouraged action. Another important element of environment is digital space. Modern life includes constant interaction with digital devices. Phones, computers, and tablets provide endless streams of information. These tools are valuable, yet they can also create powerful distractions. Imagine a young graphic designer named Imran. Imran worked on creative projects using his computer, but his focus was constantly interrupted by social media notifications, emails, and messages. Each notification captured his attention and pulled his mind away from creative thinking. Imran decided to redesign his digital environment. He turned off unnecessary notifications, closed unrelated applications, and used a simple screen layout that showed only the tools needed. The change was immediate. Without constant interruptions, his mind entered deeper concentration. Projects that once required many hours could now be completed more efficiently. Imran realized that digital environment shapes mental focus just as physical environment does. Creating a distraction-free digital space allowed his creativity to flourish. Another powerful influence in the environment is the people who surround us. Human behavior is strongly affected by social surroundings. The attitudes, habits, and expectations of others often shape our own actions. If a person spends time with individuals who value growth, discipline, and creativity, those qualities naturally become more attractive. On the other hand, if the environment is filled with negativity, laziness, or constant distraction, the brain may adopt similar patterns. Consider the story of a young athlete named Haris. Haris wanted to improve his physical fitness, but he often spent time with friends who preferred relaxing activities. When Haris attempted to train seriously, he felt out of place. Eventually, he joined a local running group where members met every morning to practice. The energy of the group was inspiring. Everyone was focused, determined, and supportive. Being part of this environment encouraged Haris to maintain his training schedule. The presence of motivated people created positive pressure. Soon running became a natural part of his daily life. The social environment had transformed his habits. Lighting, sound, and atmosphere also influence productivity. Bright, organized spaces often encourage alertness and clarity, while dark, cluttered environments can reduce energy. Some people focus better in silence, while others benefit from soft background music. Understanding personal preferences allows individuals to design environments that support concentration. For example, a young researcher named Leela discovered that gentle instrumental music helped her maintain focus during long study sessions. The music created a calm rhythm that reduced mental fatigue. By shaping her surroundings carefully, she built a space that supported deep thinking. Environment design is not about creating perfect conditions, but about removing unnecessary obstacles. Each small improvement makes productive behavior slightly easier. A clean desk reduces visual distraction. A quiet room supports concentration. A dedicated workspace signals the brain that it is time to act. Over time, these changes create powerful mental associations. The environment becomes a partner in productivity. When people step into a well-designed space, their brains naturally align with the intended activity. This reduces the need for constant willpower. Action begins to feel more automatic. People who struggle with procrastination often attempt to change themselves through sheer determination. Yet sometimes the most effective change comes from adjusting the environment. Instead of forcing the brain to resist temptation, remove the temptation. Instead of hoping for focus, create surroundings that support focus. When environment and intention, productivity grows naturally. The path to consistent action becomes smoother because the brain receives clear signals from the world around it. Chapter 6. Defeating distractions and mental sabotage. Every person who wants to achieve something meaningful eventually faces the same invisible enemy: distraction. Distraction steals attention, interrupts focus, and quietly delays progress. A person may begin a task with strong intention, but within minutes, the mind drifts towards something easier or more entertaining. A message appears on the phone, a notification flashes on the screen, a random thought pulls attention in another direction. Before the person realizes what has happened, valuable time has disappeared. To overcome procrastination, it is necessary to understand why distraction is so powerful. The human brain is naturally attracted to new and stimulating information. This instinct developed long ago when survival depended on noticing changes in the environment. A sudden sound, movement, or signal could mean danger or opportunity. Because of this ancient survival system, the brain quickly reacts to anything new or unexpected. In modern life, digital technology constantly produces new signals, notifications, alerts, messages, and videos compete for attention every moment. These signals trigger curiosity and release small bursts of pleasure inside the brain. The mind begins to crave this stimulation. Over time, distraction becomes a habit. Even when a person tries to focus, the brain may search for new stimulation because it has grown accustomed to frequent. This is why many people find it difficult to concentrate for long periods. The brain has been trained to expect constant change. But the good news is that attention can be trained just like any other skill. When people understand how distraction works, they can begin protecting their focus. To understand this more clearly, imagine the story of a young software developer named No-Man. No-Man worked on complex programming projects that required deep concentration. Yet he often struggled to complete his tasks efficiently. Each time he began coding, he checked messages, opened social media, and browsed random websites. These interruptions seemed small, but they repeatedly broke his focus. No-Man noticed that after each distraction, it took several minutes to regain concentration. The constant switching between tasks slowed his progress and increased frustration. One day, No-Man decided to observe his own behavior carefully. He realized that many distractions were not forced upon him, he was voluntarily seeking them. Whenever the work became slightly difficult, his brain searched for easier stimulation. Understanding this pattern gave him a new strategy. Instead of allowing unlimited access to distractions, he created boundaries. He placed his phone in another room during work sessions. He closed unrelated applications on his computer and used a timer to work for focused intervals. At first, the silence felt uncomfortable because his brain expected constant stimulation. But after several days, something remarkable happened. His mind adapted. Without interruptions, he entered deeper concentration and finished tasks more quickly. No man discovered that focus grows stronger when distractions are removed. This experience reveals an important truth. The brain does not easily resist temptation when temptation is always present. Removing distractions is often easier than resisting them. Another form of distraction comes from internal thoughts rather than external devices. The mind often produces worries, memories, and random ideas while a person is trying to focus. A student reading a textbook may suddenly begin thinking about future plans or past events. An artist painting a picture may start wondering about unrelated problems. These mental interruptions are natural because the brain constantly generates thoughts. However, learning to manage these thoughts can protect attention. Consider the experience of a young researcher named Farah. Farah worked on academic studies that required long hours of reading and analysis. During her work, she often experienced waves of distracting thoughts. Sometimes she worried about personal responsibilities. Sometimes she imagined future scenarios. These thoughts pulled her away from the task. Farah discovered a helpful technique. Whenever a distracting thought appeared, she wrote it down in a small notebook beside her desk. Writing the thought gave the brain permission to release it temporarily. The idea was captured and could be addressed later. This simple practice allowed Farah to return her attention to the present task. The notebook became a safe place for thoughts that did not require immediate action. Another powerful method for protecting focus is working in time blocks. The brain often finds it easier to concentrate when effort is limited to a clear period. For example, a person may decide to focus deeply for 25 minutes and then take a short break. During the focus period, distractions are avoided completely. The knowledge that a break will arrive soon makes concentration easier. This method creates rhythm in the mind. Periods of effort are balanced with moments of rest. Imagine a young architect named Danish who used this technique. Danish often worked on detailed design plans that required careful attention. In the past, he tried to work continuously for many hours, which often led to fatigue and distraction. Eventually, he began dividing his work into focused intervals. During each interval, he concentrated completely on one part of the design. When the timer ended, he stood up stretched and allowed his mind to rest. After the break, he returned to another interval of focused work. This rhythm improved both his productivity and creativity. His brain learned to enter concentration quickly because it knew the effort was temporary. Mental sabotage is another hidden challenge that interferes with action. Sometimes the brain produces negative thoughts that discourage progress. A person may think this task is too difficult. I might fail. I am not good enough. These thoughts create emotional resistance and lead to avoidance. Understanding that these thoughts are mental habits rather than facts is an important step. Consider the story of a young public speaker named Samir. Samir had valuable ideas to share, but he often delayed preparing presentations because he feared making mistakes. Each time he thought about speaking in front of others, his mind produced, "What if the audience criticizes me? What if I forget my words?" These thoughts created anxiety and prevented action. One day, Samir learned a powerful strategy. Instead of arguing with the negative thoughts, he acknowledged them calmly and continued preparing his presentation. He reminded himself that progress comes from practice rather than perfection. The more he practiced, the more confident he became. Eventually, the fear lost its power because action replaced hesitation. This example shows that mental sabotage often disappears when a person continues acting despite doubt. Another effective way to protect focus is creating a clear intention before beginning a task. When the brain knows exactly what it must do, it becomes easier to resist unrelated activities. Imagine a young student named Huda preparing for an important exam. In the past, she opened her books without a clear plan, which made studying feel confusing. Her mind wandered easily because the direction was unclear. Later, she began starting each session with a simple intention. She wrote down the specific topic she would study during that time. This clear objective guided her attention. Instead of drifting through different subjects, she focused on one defined goal. Her concentration improved because the brain understood the purpose of the effort. Energy also plays an important role in managing distraction. When the body is tired, the brain naturally seeks easy stimulation. This is why distractions become more tempting late at night or during periods of exhaustion. Maintaining physical energy through rest, movement, and healthy habits supports mental focus. For example, a young journalist named Yasser noticed that his concentration declined when he worked for long hours without breaks. He began adding short walks and stretches between writing sessions. These small movements refreshed his mind and restored his attention. The brain functions best when the body receives proper care. Defeating distraction is not about eliminating every interruption from life. Instead, it is about building awareness and creating systems that protect focus. Each small step strengthens the ability to concentrate. Over time, the brain adapts to longer periods of deep attention. This ability becomes a powerful advantage because meaningful work often requires sustained focus. When distractions lose their influence, productivity rises, creativity expands, and progress accelerates. The mind becomes calmer, more deliberate, and more capable of completing important tasks. Chapter 7. Entering the state of flow. There are moments in life when work feels almost effortless. A person becomes deeply focused on a task, and time seems to move differently. Hours pass, yet it feels like only minutes. The mind is clear, attention is sharp, and every action flows naturally into the next. This powerful mental condition is known as the state of flow. Flow is one of the most productive and satisfying experiences the human brain can have. In this state, distraction fades, self-doubt disappears, and the mind becomes completely absorbed in the activity. Athletes experience it during intense competition. Artists feel it while creating. Musicians enter it while performing. Writers discover it while crafting stories. Programmers encounter it while solving complex problems. In the state of flow, action feels natural rather than forced. Understanding how flow works can greatly reduce procrastination, because when people enter this state, they no longer struggle to continue working. The brain becomes fully engaged and motivated. To understand flow more clearly, imagine the story of a young game designer named Arman. Arman worked at a small studio developing creative digital games. His job involved designing levels, solving design challenges, and testing gameplay experiences. At first, Arman struggled with procrastination. Some tasks felt difficult, and he often delayed starting them. But occasionally, something different happened. When Arman began working on a particularly interesting design idea, his mind became completely absorbed. He experimented with shapes, movement, and interactive elements. Hours passed without him noticing. During these sessions, Arman felt energized, creative, and focused. When the workday ended, he often felt surprised by how much progress he had made. This was the state of flow. Arman realized that when his work balanced challenge and skill, his brain naturally entered this powerful state. The tasks were not too easy and not too overwhelming. They required concentration, but remained achievable. This balance created engagement. The brain enjoys challenges that stretch ability without creating anxiety. When a task is too easy, the mind becomes bored and seeks stimulation elsewhere. When a task feels too difficult, the brain becomes anxious and avoids starting. Flow appears when the challenge sits between these extremes. Consider another example from the life of a young architect named Lina. Lina designed buildings and interior spaces for clients. Her projects required creativity, planning, and technical precision. When Lina worked on very simple tasks, she often felt bored, but when she worked on extremely complex designs, she sometimes felt overwhelmed. Eventually, she learned how to structure her work differently. She divided large projects into smaller design challenges. Each challenge required concentration, but remained manageable. As she solved one design problem after another, her mind entered deeper focus. The steady rhythm of challenge and progress helped her experience flow more frequently. Flow also requires clear goals. When the brain understands exactly what needs to be done, it can focus fully on the activity. Unclear goals create confusion and distraction. Imagine a young student named Bilkis studying mathematics. When she opened her textbook without a specific plan, she often felt lost. Her attention drifted because the purpose of the study session was unclear. Later, she began setting clear goals before each session. She wrote down the specific problems she intended to solve. This simple clarity allowed her brain to focus directly on the objective. As she worked through the problems one by one, she felt increasing concentration. The clear direction helped her enter a state similar to flow. Another important factor that supports flow is immediate feedback. The brain enjoys activities where results appear quickly because feedback shows whether progress is being made. Games provide a perfect example. Players receive constant signals showing success, failure, and improvement. These signals keep the mind engaged. Many productive activities can be structured in a similar way. For instance, a young photographer named Samir wanted to improve his skills. Instead of taking random photos, he began creating small daily challenges. Each day he focused on one technique, such as lighting, composition, or movement. After taking photographs, he reviewed the results immediately. This feedback allowed him to adjust his technique and see improvement. The process felt engaging because progress was visible. Flow also thrives in environments with minimal interruption. Distractions break the delicate concentration required for deep focus. Imagine a young researcher named Aisha working on scientific experiments. Her work required long periods of careful analysis. When colleagues frequently interrupted her concentration, she struggled to maintain deep focus. Later, she began scheduling specific hours for uninterrupted research. During those hours, she avoided meetings, messages, and unnecessary conversation. This protected time allowed her mind to sink deeply into the work. Soon she noticed that her thinking became clearer and more creative. Flow emerged naturally when the environment supported concentration. Another fascinating aspect of flow is the way it transforms emotional experience. When people enter this state, they often feel calm, energized, and satisfied at the same time. The brain releases chemicals that support learning, creativity, and motivation. This positive feeling encourages people to return to the activity again and again. Consider the journey of a young musician named Kareem. Kareem practiced guitar every evening. At first, he practiced only because he wanted to improve. But during certain sessions, he became completely absorbed in the music. His fingers moved naturally. Across the strings, melodies formed effortlessly, and the outside world seemed to disappear. These moments felt deeply rewarding. Kareem began looking forward to practice because he knew it could lead to that powerful feeling. Flow had turned effort into enjoyment. Another example can be seen in the experience of a young chef named Sana. Sana worked in a busy restaurant kitchen, preparing meals for customers. During peak hours, the kitchen became a place of intense focus. Orders arrived rapidly, ingredients moved quickly, and every action required precision. Instead of feeling overwhelmed, Sana felt energized. Her mind tracked multiple tasks simultaneously and responded instantly. The rhythm of cooking, plating, and serving created a seamless sequence of actions. When the rush ended, Sana often realized that she had entered a state of flow. The challenge, the clear goals, and the immediate feedback had combined to create deep engagement. Flow teaches an important lesson about productivity. Work does not always need to feel like a struggle. When the conditions are right, the brain becomes naturally absorbed in meaningful activity. People who learn how to create these conditions experience less procrastination because the work itself becomes engaging. Entering flow often begins with a simple step: starting. Once action begins, concentration can gradually deepen. This is why the micro-actions discussed earlier are so powerful. They help the brain cross the barrier of beginning. From that point forward, momentum builds and flow becomes possible. Over time, people who regularly enter flow begin associating work with satisfaction rather than stress. Their relationship with effort changes. Instead of avoiding difficult tasks, they approach them with curiosity. Instead of fearing challenges, they see opportunities to engage their skills. The mind becomes more confident, more resilient, and more capable. The state of flow represents one of the highest forms of productivity and creativity available to the human brain. It transforms work into a meaningful experience where progress feels natural and rewarding. Chapter 8. The Power of Habit. Many people believe that achieving success is about willpower, motivation, or occasional bursts of effort. Yet the truth is that the most consistent and long-lasting progress comes from habits. Habits are the brain's way of automating behavior. They turn repeated actions into routines that require little conscious effort. The human brain is designed to conserve energy. It seeks ways to perform activities automatically without requiring constant decision-making. This is why habits exist. They allow the brain to execute behaviors efficiently, freeing mental energy for other challenges. When habits are aligned with goals, they become powerful tools for productivity. When habits are misaligned, they become obstacles that reinforce procrastination. Consider the story of a young entrepreneur named Adil. Adil wanted to build a successful online business. He knew what he needed to do: create products, build a website, reach customers, and provide consistent service. At first, he tried to rely on motivation alone. Some days he felt energetic and took action. Other days, he delayed tasks and procrastination took over. After struggling for months, Adil learned about the power of habit. He decided to create small daily routines. He dedicated the first hour of each morning to product development. Every afternoon, he spent 30 minutes engaging with customers. He repeated these actions every day without relying on motivation. Over time, his brain formed strong mental pathways that associated the routine times with productive action. The work became automatic. Adil no longer had to convince himself to begin. The habits guided his behavior naturally. This is the essence of habit power. Habits form through repetition and consistency. The more often an action is repeated, the stronger the neural pathway becomes. Once the pathway is established, the behavior requires little thought and continues almost effortlessly. Imagine a young student named Farah who struggled with studying. She often delayed preparing for exams because starting felt difficult. Farah decided to create a simple habit. She placed her textbooks on the dining table and promised herself she would read one page every morning before breakfast. The first few days, she barely noticed progress, but she continued. Weeks later, her habit was fully established. Reading every morning became automatic. She no longer had to fight procrastination. The environment and repetition had trained her brain. Another example comes from the life of a young writer named Zainab. Zainab wanted to write consistently, but often felt overwhelmed by the size of her projects. She decided to create a daily writing habit. Every day she wrote for exactly 15 minutes at the same time and in the same space. At first it felt small, yet the routine was consistent. Over months her brain began to expect writing at that time and place. The action became automatic. Soon Zainab was writing daily without struggle. Her habit had transformed procrastination into consistent action. Habits also work because they rely on cues, routines, and rewards. A cue is a signal that triggers the behavior. For example, seeing a clean desk may remind a student to study. The routine is the behavior itself. The reward is the positive feeling or result that reinforces the behavior. For instance, completing a task may create satisfaction, pride, or relief. This cycle of cue, routine, reward strengthens the habit each time it is repeated. Consider a young athlete named Rahim. Rahim wanted to improve his fitness. He set a cue for himself. He placed his running shoes beside his bed every night. The cue reminded him in the morning to exercise. The routine was running every day. The reward was the energy and sense of accomplishment he felt afterward. Over time, the habit became automatic. His brain no longer resisted the effort. The combination of cue, routine, and reward created unstoppable momentum. Another important factor in habit formation is starting small. Many people fail to establish habits because they attempt too much at once. For example, a person may decide to completely transform their lifestyle overnight: exercise for an hour, eat perfectly, and learn a new skill all at once. The brain perceives this as overwhelming and resistance appears. Instead, starting with tiny habits A young musician named Sana wanted to practice daily. She began with just 5 minutes a day. The small habit was easy to complete and required almost no motivation. Over weeks, her practice time naturally expanded. The habit had grown without pressure. This is why micro-actions and habits work together so effectively. Another advantage of habits is that they reduce decision fatigue. When behaviors are automated, the brain spends less energy deciding what to do. For example, a young professional named Omar wanted to eat healthier. Instead of deciding each day what to eat, he created a habit of preparing simple, healthy meals every evening for the next day. By automating this decision, his brain saved energy for more important tasks. Consistency is easier when habits remove constant choices. Habits can also be used to stack productive actions. Action stacking involves linking a new habit to an existing routine. For example, a student may decide to review vocabulary words immediately after brushing teeth every morning. The existing habit becomes a cue for the new habit. Over time, the stacked behavior becomes automatic. Another young entrepreneur named Hina used habit stacking to improve productivity. She decided to write down her most important task of the day immediately after making her morning coffee. The coffee routine reminded her to plan the day and execute the task. Over weeks, this small habit created remarkable consistency. The brain loves routine and responds positively to predictability. Another powerful aspect of habits is identity reinforcement. When behaviors are repeated consistently, the brain begins to associate the actions with the person's. For example, a person who exercises daily begins to see themselves as an active individual. A person who writes daily begins to see themselves as a writer. Identity aligned with habit strengthens motivation and reduces procrastination. A young artist named Sarah discovered this principle. By painting every day, she began thinking of herself as a creative person. The new identity encouraged her to continue even on days when motivation was low. Finally, habits protect progress from emotional fluctuations. Motivation is unpredictable energy and mood change constantly. Yet when a habit is established, the behavior continues even when feelings are weak. The structure of the habit removes reliance on fleeting emotions. This is why building the right habits is one of the most reliable ways to overcome procrastination. When habits, environment, micro-actions, and inner motivation work together, the brain naturally moves toward consistent action. Over time, these elements create unstoppable momentum. The small, consistent choices compound into meaningful results. Conclusion: transforming procrastination into purposeful action. Procrastination is not a sign of laziness or failure. It is a natural response of the brain to overwhelm, uncertainty, or discomfort. Yet understanding the brain's patterns and learning how to work with them rather than against them can transform procrastination into consistent action. Throughout this journey, we explored how the mind works, how habits form, how motivation flows, and how the environment shapes behavior. We discovered that success is not created through sporadic bursts of effort, but through deliberate systems that guide the brain toward productive action. Micro-actions teach the brain that starting is easy. Small steps create momentum and reduce mental resistance. Daily routines and rituals turn effort into automatic behavior. Inner motivation fuels energy when challenges appear, and purpose transforms work from a burden into a meaningful journey. Distractions lose their power when the environment is designed to support focus. When the brain experiences clear cues, uninterrupted time, and minimal temptations, attention naturally deepens. Flow emerges when challenge and skill align, creating immersive experiences where work becomes effortless and enjoyable. Habits are the engine that carries progress forward. They conserve mental energy, reinforce identity, and allow consistent action, even when motivation fluctuates. Repetition, cues, routines, and rewards combine to create patterns that shape behavior automatically. The greatest breakthroughs occur when all these elements work together. Micro-actions lead to flow, inner motivation fuels persistence. Habits automate progress, and a supportive environment guides the brain naturally toward action. Every small step compounds over time. Each choice to begin builds mental pathways that strengthen focus, confidence, and self-discipline. Success is not the result of waiting for perfect conditions or infinite motivation. It is the result of understanding the mind and designing life in a way that encourages consistent progress. You have the tools to rewire your brain, to take action to overcome procrastination, and to achieve meaningful goals. Purpose, curiosity, habit, and environment are not abstract concepts. They are practical forces that shape daily behavior. By starting today with small, deliberate steps, by designing your environment, by cultivating inner motivation, and by forming empowering habits, you can transform the way you work, learn, and create. The journey from hesitation to action begins with a single decision, a single step, a single page, a single moment of focus. Each choice builds momentum. Each action reinforces identity. Each habit compounds into results. Procrastination may appear strong, but the brain is capable of change. Purposeful action is stronger. The power to act consistently, to achieve, to create, and to live fully lies within you.
Kindly subscribe to my channel.